Any advance on 15,000, my bidder here. Last call, Riata's up. Sell it, 9232. Thank you for those bids.
I first got involved with the SS Central America almost 40 years ago now when Tommy Thompson, who was my neighbor and friend, shared the historical research he was doing with us. And I took it from there, from October or November of 1983, all the way through all of the early expeditions, and then the court case occurred, and I met you, I think it was in 98,
98, fall of 98.
Fall of 98. We had our first encounter. You were, at least as far as my team was concerned, playing for the other side in a way, although you were playing for the court.
I was 100% playing for the court. And
yeah.
The way it had worked out was, as I was told, the judge didn't think either side knew whether the stuff was real or didn't know the proper context of what was there, etc. So
yeah.
they asked for an independent person.
And that was you.
As I heard, Thompson refused to pay for it, and the insurance companies immediately said they would. So
okay, that's the way it went down.
Yeah, as I was told, it was a 6-month process of interviewing people around the country and or the world or whatever. And again, the way I heard was from Dr. Bob Chandler at Wells Fargo, who told me I might get a phone call, and that he had gotten a phone call, and it had fit him until they got into the part about the modern gold business and how it compared to the financial gold business of the gold rush. And he said, no, he says, I can't answer any of those questions. You got to talk to this guy. So that was me.
Yeah. Well, I recall that in our first encounter in a Brinks facility on the eastern seaboard, you came in, and it took us all of about 20 minutes to figure out that the other guy was a geologist and B, only interested in finding out the truth about this stuff.
Yeah,
and it was all real, of course, and you know, there was never any shenanigans in that way. You know, it was it's been under my control from the time it left the bottom of the ocean and arrived in my lab on the ship.
Yeah.
So.
And it was, yes, it was all real, and it was fun. I didn't know all the things that had gone on, and because I was independent, I was kind of kept from all that.
Yeah.
And frankly, I didn't give a damn.
Right.
And I didn't, you know, there were a lot of questions, and the insurance company had a lot of questions, and the judge had a lot of questions, and things of that nature. And you know, the first day was first day, but there was a lot of stuff going into it where things were questioned, and it's understandable when you have non-scientists trying to understand a highly scientific project, and non-scientists trying to understand how we do business, which is not the same as other people. We're trained differently. Our brains are trained differently. We are trained to look for patterns. We're trained to take advantage of those patterns and to use those patterns to our advantage in not only the knowledge of what's coming up or what you're handling, but it speeds up the whole thing.
Sure,
And I
because
remember
it's predictable.
Yeah,
you know,
the first question was, well, this guy's splitting this stuff. He's got holes in his inventory, and all kinds of this, that, and the other thing. And I'm looking at these lists, and I'm going, it ends at 1579, and the next one's 2000. I got another thing through 2,200, and it goes to 3. These are patterns. These are groups.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know this guy. I have no idea what he's doing. But if this was me, these are specific groups. And I'm telling all these lawyers and all these various people.
I had them all split out by the years in which they were recovered, so that I could know that simply by looking at the inventory number.
It's ultra simple. And
yeah,
so
it's a mnemonic
before
code,
I knew
you know?
you or anybody else, I'm telling these guys that. And of course, the next question after the first day, because I mean, the first day we're there, and I don't remember necessarily all the details other than I had this team of people waiting for me in the law office in Norfolk waiting to ask me all the questions after day one.
Yeah.
And, you know, my eyes are wide open because they were trying to keep quiet, but they had suspected some tomfoolery and some other things. And my first job is the gold real. And I knew it the second you opened the box. First off, the color's there, and then the specific gravity, the density of the bars, and the way they're marked. It's everything I'd seen in my life, not only in historical stuff, but in modern stuff, because the same, I'm going to call them cultural patterns of marking ingots, it's been passed down for, frankly, a couple of thousand years. And it's all there. And guys like me that were in the mining business and in the production business, I knew it. I saw it. I had to deal with it every day. But the guys in the antiquarian business didn't know squat about it.
Right.
Hence the phony bars that are out there and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so as soon as I'm looking at them, I'm just immediately, it's real. Just now, it's real.
Wow, this is real.
And of course, I tell them all that as soon as I get back. There's just no question in my mind. It's real. Well, do you test it? I said, frankly, I don't need to. I've handled so much gold in my life. I don't need to. I said we could. We'd have to cut one in half or melt it. And I said, you're going to destroy a historical artifact. I see no need to. I think it's real. This is fantastic stuff. It's the best anybody's ever seen. And it's wonderful. And, you know, there were other aspects of things that they asked me on that front end. But the job, as you remember, was to take inventory for the court.
Was to look at everything and take inventory.
Wasn't everything.
Well,
only gold ingots and coins.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And it had not. And even though I might ask 8 million questions of them, which I did, I was reminded that's it. Well, what about this and this and this? Nope. Just the gold ingots and gold coins. That's it. And there had been great concern and discussions in advance about, from my end in particular, about security, about chain of custody, because in the mining business, chain of custody is a big deal. And in the legal business, chain of custody is a big deal. And I was worried as hell because from what I could tell by the way the negotiations were going, we were dealing with someone in charge of this project who was squirrely and at first was denying me all the safeguards necessary for a clean chain of custody process, which was Tommy. Because initially he denied allowing any cameras, he denied all of it. And I told the lawyers, I'm out. I can't do. I'm not doing anything. If I can't control the chain of custody, I'm out. Period. Because it's a setup. It's a sitting duck setup, and I'm not going to be part of a setup. And
so we ended up filming everything that we were doing.
Well, what happened was, and I think you even told me some of this, but finally he came around. I don't remember the story you told me at one time, but I don't remember
it, quite frankly.
But he finally came around, and we filmed it, and we put ourselves in a situation where you essentially had a circle. You had an assistant, I had an assistant, and it caught all 8 hands in the film full time.
All the time.
All the time. And it was set up in a way of a circle of control so that Columbus America had control of getting it out of the box and putting it back in the box.
So you had control of examining it when I had it out of the box.
If something's missing, it's not on me.
Yeah.
Because Columbus America controlled coming out, putting it back. and you should probably tell the story, but about the first day and when I showed up, because I showed up as if this was a science, not a science project, but a major science project. So I had made
you had cards.
5-inch by 8.5-inch on cardstock, pre-printed stuff with everything I could think about that would be going on with these coins, from scratch marks to date to...
You could mark it right on the coin where these issues were and all of that kind of thing.
And the same thing with ingots. I had it all set up.
You drew pictures of all the ingots.
And drew photos of it, because we were allowed to shoot the video, but Tommy wouldn't allow individual camera shots.
Yeah.
Well, that was our negotiation, because I really just cared about chain of custody, and I don't want to get set up. So I sketched every single.
You sketched all the ingots,
and every single coin came out, and I logged them in. And instead of sketching one and taking notes and going real slow, it's check, calcium carbonate, check, check.
It's got this, it's got
rust
that.
stain here it is, boom, boom. And so we went through it really fast.
We went through it really fast, but it still took us 22 days.
Yeah, a long time.
To do that, because there were 8,000 pieces of gold to look at.
Right, and I remember you talking about when Christie's came in to do it, and the guy pulls out a yellow tablet, and you went, "Oh my God!"
Nobody else was ever prepared.
That's an 8-month project.
Nobody else was ever prepared that when the Christie's guys came in, Christie guy came in to do that for their legal purposes or whatever. It was a matter of he could do a sample.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, like, well, look. If all you have is 3 days or whatever it was that he had, you tell me what containers you want me to bring out. Here's my inventory, and I'll bring out anything you want. You can verify that what I have said in my inventory is absolutely true. That process was completely random. I wasn't hiding anything. You can call for any number, and I'll give you the sheets. You go through them. And yeah, pretty quickly he concluded exactly as you did that it was all tight.
Yeah.
There are always in any inventory. There's always like, oh, you've missed a mint mark here, or you've, mischaracterized an ingot. I remember I had an ingot one time in there. Actually, I think it had been corrected before you got involved, but instead of it being a Justin Hunter, I had it down as a Justin Humbert. So, this was like a oddball in there, and somebody like seized on it. Well, this one's different, and no, it was just an error. It was just an error, and it was all clean and tight.
Yeah. And along the lines of funny stuff that everybody out there knows with Raiders of the Lost Ark, somewhere in some archive are sitting about 80 VHS tapes of all of our 22 days together.
I may know where at least some of that is.
But we both know where they are, and what we did was to keep it again random and the check and balance system. We randomly picked half each,
right?
And each side went home with half, just in case.
Just in case.
And it's random, and of course it never had to get used.
It never got to have.
It
needed to be used.
There was no issue there.
So anyway, a lot of stuff happened with business and law and all of that, and we had the division in kind, which was fascinating.
The division in kind was fantastic, and almost nobody knows about it. And I can't imagine, sitting in court figuring it out, but you had to come up with a clever system, because the challenge by the judge was come up with a system that will allow for a fair split based on the court award of 92.719 or whatever the heck it was. And it wasn't so simple. And
it isn't. I consulted actually the same operation system mathematician who had done our search theory stuff. He comes from a major operation systems research company, and I said, well, first I researched it, and I told him it looks to me like there's this field of your science that is known as the algorithms of fair division. where the simplest method is you've got a cake, and I cut the cake in half, and you get to select what half you want to take. So in case I cut it like cattywampus or something like that, you know, I will end up with the smaller half for not having been fair in the way I divided it.
But we end up with this really strange division.
The treasure, which, mind you, only a very minor amount of it had been conserved to that point. So there was rust on things. It was difficult to tell real grades of coins or all of the hidden stuff that was in it. And we had
what Bob and I would call clumps of coins.
Yeah,
that
there
had been
were
completely
clusters,
unconserved.
we called them.
Yeah, clusters. You could have 20 U.S. 20s together. You could have a cluster of small ingots
there were concreted
and gold coins,
masses.
and you could have rare private California gold coins.
You had no idea what was in
there. You had
there.
all this stuff. You have no clue.
So anyway, based on the knowledge that we had, there were a few ways that this could be divided, and I think I'm going to get these numbers right, that we could divide it into 39 parts, in which case the underwriters would be able to select 3 of those. So 3 39ths came up to pretty close to what the 7.519 or whatever it was, the percentage was, although it was a little bit short. And then to get it the most accurate, I had to cut it into something either like 169 parts or 171 parts. And that was too complicated. That was too many kind of parts. I said, well, we can do 7/90ths going to you, and that comes out actually a little bit in your favor. Well, the lawyers like that part on your side. A little bit, like a third significant digit in these percentages for something that we don't know the value of them yet. You know, it was just dumb. So anyway, the idea was when we laid out all of the lots, all of the sealed containers and everything in the Brinks indoor gun range, 25-yard indoor gun range that they had, and we lined them up, you know, lots 1 through 90, up one end and down the other one, and all that. And underwriters selected first, then we selected second, then they selected third, we selected fourth, until you had your 7/90ths.
So basically what you had is each side gets 7 picks, but the salver, Columbus America, got all the rest.
Yeah.
So what the court was doing was allowing the insurance company to have 7 of the first 14 picks.
Right.
And it was interesting. Now, by that time, of course, I had been hired by the insurance companies, because the moment it was kind of a surprise probably to both of us, the moment in time I handed that notebook over to the federal
inventory
judge.
To the federal judge,
and I didn't know it was coming. Immediately, Gil Ware puts up his hand and addresses the judge. We would like to hire Mr. Holabird,
right?
And we need the permission of you, and we need the permission of Thompson,
right,
as our consultant or whatever it is. And everybody said okay. So from then on, I was doing that. And the reason I brought that up is because Bob had come up with this rather ingenious method of split, and it was interesting. And
this is actually the way that complicated estates are sometimes settled as well. So
what's more difficult here, because the reality is you've got more than 10,000 pieces.
Oh yeah, I know.
And you don't have time to put a value on every one unless you do.
No, I had to come up with an idea of a unit.
Right.
And you know, just a unit.
And here's
you can
the
call
value
it
of the
anything you
units.
want to, and the value of the units are this, and they're based on this, and the ingots got a certain amount of units based on which assayers they were and how rare they were, and the coins, basically the unit was an unknown double eagle.
Yeah. So
you know,
so it was a pretty, my opinion, which has never been discussed with Bob, is that it was a pretty ingenious method. I liked what I saw when I told the lawyers. I said, this is really interesting. And I said, there's a chance it's loaded in places we don't know. And I said, I don't know, but it doesn't matter, because if it is, my job's to find it. And if it's not, then we take another tact. And then that was really interesting because I was enjoying that day that, okay, this is your job, Fred, because I'm the guy that got told to do it.
Right.
And I was working on all kinds of interesting things. And in the background, the stuff that Bob and I didn't have to deal with is the mega politics.
Oh, man.
Holy Christ. I'm telling you, it was big, monster. And of course, the split is coming up after we had been locked in quarters. You remember that? Locked in the law office up on the second floor, locked up, and the judge says, settle, solve it, now. And Thompson gets up for a 45-minute speech or whatever it was, telling all the lawyers, yet again, I want all of it. This isn't right. I want 100%. And it goes, on and on and on. Bob's falling asleep in the corner. I fell asleep in the other corner. It just on and on and on. Finally, somebody shuts him up, and he's not going to settle. He wants 100%, and he's not going to settle for anything. And so, of course, this ends up in all this stuff. And and then the politics keeps going. And I don't know all the politics, okay, because I'm dealing with a law firm, which is unquestionably one of the top maritime law firms in America. Unquestionably, if not the world.
Crenshaw, Ware and Associates is like
maybe the
top
world.
folks.
And I'm dealing with...
Well, we had another one.
Yeah.
Our Admiralty folks were pretty darn good,
too.
So.
And I'm dealing...
I know what you mean.
And I've been lucky in my life to deal with some of the smartest lawyers on the planet, and in mining law and everything else, and just wonderful people, incredibly smart, including, one of my first mentors, who was one of the smartest mining lawyers on the planet for Norton Simon. Anyway, there's stuff going on in the background that I don't know about, but I hear about it.
There was lots of stuff I didn't know about as well, because all I did was feed information to the business end and the legal end of
so what's happening is this consortium of insurance companies who were the survivors are feeding the lawyers with stuff. And then, on the other hand, you got Thompson and his lawyers feeding that batch of lawyers with stuff. And there's all this stuff going back and forth, which is a bunch of legal fisticuffs. And it got interesting. And I was blown away because it's like... And so finally, I asked Ware, the legal team, I said, there's 2 ways to do this. There's 3 ways to do this. 1, go after the money. I said, that's 1. 2, Thompson's made it clear he has a goal, and here's the goal. Boom, 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 including a traveling exhibit and all kinds of stuff, which makes 100% sense. And then there's another method, and the other method is on film. It's a little difficult to say, but
basically, fight them.
Cut your throat.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had assumed we were going after the money, and I'd already started my work, which was time-consuming, because I had to come up with a different algorithm than what you used, but the same concept.
Right.
So I'm trying to value units. I'm trying to discover what you did, how you did it, and what I would do and how I would do it.
Because I had lots that were solely coins, I had lots that were solely ingots, and I had lots that were a mixture.
Yes. Yep. So I had started on that plan and to figure it out. And so I had narrowed it down to 3 alternatives and didn't have a list on each because each was going to take a lot of time. And I finally called them and said, what do you want me to do? And I got called back later, and they put the insurance companies on the phone with the lawyers. Now, the insurance company guys were interesting because they were playing like judges. They were kind of uppity. And the first time they spoke with me, they spoke as if they were a judge. I was specifically told, you don't talk unless spoken to. Oh, really? You're hiring me as a consultant and you want me to talk? Okay. So I think to myself. But I'm talking uppity, London. Yeah. And so where Gil likes my alternatives, but he says, I can't make this decision. They have to make this decision. And they had been working with Rick, Robo, and others.
Yeah.
And
Columbus, America.
And everyone
attorneys.
was making it exceptionally difficult on that side because of the I want 100% thing.
Yeah.
And of course, what's happening that has nothing to do with us is
No,
that
it was
these
like
lawyers are running the bill up like this,
But the
and
pit
the money
bulls-
machine's going crazy.
The pit bulls are negotiating.
Yeah.
You know, they've sent pit bulls to negotiate.
Well,
that's the way I have
and they're not
characterized it in the
negotiating.
paper.
They're
No,
not
I mean, they're
negotiating,
pit
'cause
bulls.
I'm a tougher bull than you.
That's what they pit bulls don't negotiate.
And so
they
the
just
money, the money
and-
crank's going. And so finally, the insurance company's like, I want to shut this off.
Yeah.
And they had made Thompson a really good offer, and I don't remember what it was, but he turned it down.
I
He was
don't know what it was.
He was crazy. I can't remember. I don't remember the number, so I don't even want to say, but it's
Right.
way less than what it ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned it down. He was crazy. That was the last. When we were in the locked rooms, it was the end of that. I don't remember if you were in on that.
I don't
or
think
not.
I was in on that.
Yeah, you might not
You
have
know,
been.
they
It was a cash offer.
yeah.
And he was crazy to turn it down, and he turned it down. He wanted it all.
Well.
And of course, he lost that battle mega. Anyway, so they're going back and forth for weeks, and it's lawyer fisticuffs, and I don't know what's going on. But now we got the agents on the phone with the lawyers, and Gil says, Mr. Holabird, please explain to our clients what you explained to me.
Gil Ware had that marvelous.
He was a
Southern gentleman.
Southern gentleman of the highest caliber.
He was.
And
He
his
was
brain
excellent
of the
guy.
highest caliber.
Excellent guy.
And so I did.
He treated me well after there was a suggestion at one point that perhaps Mr. Evans should not make the divisions. And I just looked at him and smiled. I remember being in the conference room at Crenshaw Ware and Associates, and I just said, Mr. Ware, a long time ago I decided that this was not a part of my financial planning because I don't know where this is going. And,
Well, they
and
knew
this
you-
is an algorithm of fair division as determined by independent mathematics, and that's what I intend to apply here. And if there is any funny business, your team have the ability to cherry pick this.
Right. So anyway, long story short, that argument came probably from London,
It probably did.
and it went away.
Yeah, it went away immediately.
But
after I told him that, it was like, oh, okay.
but after weeks, it was interesting because I didn't know all this until this phone call.
Right.
And so, what alternative would you like? I explained it to him, and the guy says, it's unquestioned.
Mm-hmm.
Cut their throat. Okay. And I knew what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed everything. That means I had to go in and change my specific picks because I had to destroy the model of a touring exhibit. I had to destroy it.
Yeah.
So
right.
that was destroyed.
Right.
I had to... it goes on from there, and I won't go into the details.
Sure, but
we had
the strategy changed.
We had seven picks,
You had 7 picks.
and they were on a yellow note card.
Mm-hmm.
And I had on the yellow note card, because of all the meetings we had with Gil, I had picked the response pick to each one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on a yellow note card. I don't know where it is. I think it's in those files. I don't know.
That's fascinating.
I picked the first 6 picks perfect for you guys as a response to ours. And Ware was blown away.
Yeah.
He's just blown away.
You knew what we were going to get
Yeah,
next.
and I should have framed that card.
Yeah,
but
that
anyway,
would be
long story
amazing.
short, the pick was done. Everybody's ready to roll, and the project can finally get going. It was interesting. There's so many more stories. That's where
Well,
we got
but that was where we met and
Yeah.
where we really became friends.
exactly. And and I was on the other side of the table from you, but I was kind of the middle. I was kind of the middle.
It didn't matter because both of us
Yeah.
were interested in the
Exactly.
truth.
And by the way, in the morning, we that was the day Gary Kinder's book came out. It
Right.
was the day it was national
Right, I
release.
remember it was like just out, and so,
So the
you
national-
you used it as a yearbook.
So the national release the deals are you can't sell before the store opens for a certain time. You have to sign these if you're going to sell for double day and all that.
Right.
And I'm getting out of the hotel and the guy's putting the book out in the front and his book shop doesn't open till 10 and it's like 8 and we got to be at the thing by 9. And I knock on the door in suit and tie and ask if he could come to the door.
Yeah.
And I explained to him quickly, I'm going to split the treasure on that book. I know you're not allowed to sell it. Can I buy that book from you right now? Because I want to get everybody to sign it. And he said, under those circumstances, okay.
Yes.
He sells me the book, which, as you know, I got signed by everybody in the room.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the funny part. The funny part was I had my briefcase with me, and I knew it was going to get tough because Tommy was doing these speeches, and everybody's at each other's throat, and you got a half a dozen U.S. Marshals and 2 different lawyer teams, and they've been doing this for 10 years.
And a
all
federal
this stuff.
magistrate judge. Was
Right,
there
and
as
so
well,
I opened the briefcase, and I pulled out an official's whistle. And I put it in my hand, and I said, when it gets rough, this is what's coming. I went like that, boom. And, of course, I told the head marshal ahead of time, this is what I'm going to do. Is it okay with you?
Yeah.
And he said, you bet. And, of course, the whole room broke up. They just broke up in laughter. It was hilarious. And it did loosen it up, which we needed.
Yeah, it needed to be loosened up. It turned out to be a pretty congenial day as it
still took
overall
4 hours or something.
Yeah, it took a while to do it. But, well, you had to check everything that was in the lots to make sure that you got everything that was in those lots.
Right. So anyway, that was good. And like you say, that's the beginning of a long friendship. We worked for different entities off and on. I worked for insurance companies. I worked for different batches of owners. I'd worked for different entities here and there.
Well, a couple years after that, 3 years I think it was after that, we did another thing together where we said, like, gosh, these ingots from the SS Central America are, unquestionably real. They absolutely form a datum against which all other Western assay ingots should be measured. And it doesn't mean that everything has to look exactly like them, but if it doesn't, you need a proper explanation for it.
Yeah, and you're right. I forgot about that because I'd already been working on ingots my whole life, including buying and selling gold on a daily basis from producing mines. But you're right. At that point, I had written stories on stuff, and the world was hitting us both for a lot of stuff. So we combined to write a paper on all this stuff, discussing all aspects of it. And it was pretty fun, and we presented it at an ANA. And the funny part about the presentation, it was the main paper for the whole show, and the head of the place was behind by over an hour, and he told us to speed it up. And I remember telling him, and the room seated 200. It was full, and they were standing all around the edges.
Yeah, they were standing around the edges.
All around the edges to hear this paper. And we showed them photographs of everything. We showed them stuff that we suspect was absolutely fake. We showed them stuff that they thought was all fake, and it wasn't fake, and here's why. Here's a direct comparison, including I had found a fantastic original gold ingot from the Denver Branch Mint from 1865 in a collection in Colorado State Historical Society that had never been on display.
Yeah.
And nobody'd seen it.
There was a lot of new stuff.
I paid $400 to have that thing pulled out and have professional photographs taken. Now look at this ingot. Look at the 1856. They are marked exactly the same.
This is the
custom.
This is
and
the
here's
custom.
The other stuff. It's not. What's wrong with this picture? Everything. And by the way, back then they were always, everybody's saying, oh, this guy's making the fakes, that guy's making the fakes. They point their finger at John Ford. They pointed at Franklin. They pointed at all kinds of people. And I had always known there's a problem with Ford. I mean, he's distributing fake stuff, and he's doing it through London, which means he knows it's fake. He's got to get it out of the country. It's the only way to do it. But I'd always suspected a third source. And it's just this last year and a half that I'm proof positive the third source made a bunch of them. Made the star ingots, the Hoard ingots, absolutely, which is out of California. And he fooled everybody for a long time, and he fed it right into the John Ford market.
Well, the thing is that you and I, over the last 2.5 decades, have really just been interested in what true stories do these pieces have to tell.
And the science behind it.
And the science behind it.
Science is awesome, because I've always said, let the science do the talking.
Yeah.
Always. Let the science do the talking. You know, we can do history so far, but we can't get that next step without the science. And the science tells you everything.
The science of looking at the artifacts allows the artifacts to tell you what they have to tell you. And I mean, there's a Latin phrase that lawyers use it, but it's become one of my favorites, which is res ipsa loquitur. And it's the object speaks for itself. And there's a lot of stuff that's not recorded in the historical record. And yet when you look at and it's the same with the artifacts as it was with the ingots.
Right.
These artifacts have just got marvelous stories to tell, which really brings me fast forward to the last year.
Right.
When I found out that California Gold Marketing Group and Dwight Manley were going to consign this to you, I was ecstatic, because I know the quality of your work. We'd known each other for a while. By that time, we were friends. And yet, we're not going to let that friendship taint any of the search for the truth either.
No.
You know, there's no bias involved here. You know, it's like, oh, look at what this, what does this mean here, Fred? You know, like, we got this little dinghy on the side of this thing. And the way these artifacts have spoken in the last year in preparation for this sale has been one of the great delights of my professional career. Getting together with you and working with you, you tapping into me, where did this come from, Bob? What kind of photographs do we have of it on the bottom? Oh, well, that was in juxtaposition with that. And, oh, look, and then from the comparison of the historical record, of which you have a vast knowledge, you're tops. And then looking at the artifacts and my background with the artifacts, like melding those two things together, we've discovered some amazing stuff this last year.
We had a ball with it. And, it started 3 years ago because the receiver, Kane, had awarded the whole deal to us.
Right.
And then we no sooner, and I'm on a chair back here telling everybody we've got this great deal and we're looking forward to it. And I start getting into it, and I pull out my old Ohio Journal of Science, and I'm going through looking at the artifacts, because they're all listed in this fantastic article that you co-wrote. And I get in there, and here's the ship's bell and stuff like that. And so I'm all excited, and I start, Kane, well, where is all this? Well, it's in Columbus. I said, great. I said, I'm going to want to start with the bell, because that's a really important part of this ship. Well, you can't have the bell. Well, what do you mean? Oh, I already agreed to sell it to a friend of mine. Nah, you can't have the bell. Well, wait a minute, I thought you were giving me all the artifacts. He's supposed to be the receiver. So, I decide to cover my tail and write something formal in writing. Next thing I know, a deal's pulled from me. And I don't know what happened. He got removed.
But well, he'd done his part, quite frankly, and even just like having the project rise like a phoenix from the ashes after Tommy Thompson fled from the federal court and such.
Yeah.
He got back out to sea. He got us a contractor. Yeah. He got us back to the site, and we recovered another 3,100 gold coins and however many, 45 ingots.
Anyway, Dwight ends up buying it.
And Dwight and California Gold Marketing Group end up acquiring it through a court-approved sale. And so now Dwight has settled in after another year on the fact that Holabird is going to handle this. And like I said, I was ecstatic.
Well, I think he called me in March and said the deal was done in November or something, but I don't remember the details. And then it took us a month to set up a mutual date.
We met in April last year, so down in Florida, and we looked at everything there. And it's been a wild ride since that, with the tour and all of the stuff that is just amazing artifacts.
Yeah, great stuff
that we had. But it took your eye and your sense of appreciation to bring that really to life.
Well, it just was, you remember my reactions as we're cleaning stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Just curating it, if you will, for the first time.
Yeah.
And we're spotting stuff. I remember what I call the keys to the gold room and screaming after I cleaned it and saw what it said.
Yeah, right.
And I remember setting out 2 other keys on the table ahead of me. and you guys said, both of you, what's up? And I said, I'm not going to tell you. Get your butt over here. And they came over and they're looking at stuff. Well, what does this mean? And I said, here's a door key.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a key to a door, a lock. Okay. Here's a key like to a railroad lock or something like that. So this is a key to a heavy duty lock here in the middle.
Well,
now,
yeah.
Now look at this key on this tag.
And
it's
huge.
this big.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that tell you? I don't know. Tells you that's a key to whatever behind it is worth more money than God. That's got to be the gold room key, because look how big it is. The lock for that thing is going to hold back the whole world.
Right.
It's the key. It's the #1 key on the whole ship.
That's it. And it was in the purser's safe.
It was in the purse. Yeah.
Actually, that whole lot, when you were looking at that for the first time, that was what I would call a cluster, in the fact that there were keys in it. There was that. The Panama Railroad tag was in there.
Oh, that was killer.
You know, there were these things that the purser had in a wad of metal inside the purser safe, and we had cleaned it out as a group. Hadn't done much of anything else to it other than put it in fresh water for a few months to make sure everything was leached out and such, but it hadn't been separated yet.
It was fantastic.
And it was just a great discovery moment when we were doing that.
And then of course we started getting it here, and it took a long time to get it here. There was supposed to have been, some of it was supposed to have been certified, and that process never happened.
You know, it's a question of how much time can you devote.
Well, they had
toward
promised.
bringing
I think
this.
they had promised Dwight they'd have it done in a week or two, and
well,
here it is
didn't
a few
happen.
months later.
It didn't happen.
And it didn't happen.
But
so comes to Reno, you fly out.
Yeah.
And we start going through it again, and wow, eyes open up. This is fantastic, one after another after another. Although we were a little surprised when you and I opened up the porthole.
Yeah, the crack was very, very disappointing. I was deeply upset.
Yeah, we both were, and it was pretty nasty. But anyway, what a voyage.
But we prepped for this wonderful tour we took the artifacts on.
Yeah.
Showed it to a lot of fascinating markets.
The
gold rush itself, that was a thrill for me, because back in the late 70s, I took like a motor tour very quickly through the gold rush country, but I didn't linger very long because I had a different agenda back then. Heck, it was back before I even got involved with the SS Central America. So doing that and meeting all of those people, and the sense I had that, gosh, the gold rush materials are coming home to be seen, that was very meaningful to me. You know, it was like a completion of a circle. And I'm so glad we did that show, because I met a lot of really great people, great gold rush collectors, some of whom were participants in the sale the last couple of days.
And again, it was a fun show, and I'm glad I got you there, because it was an important show. And compared to the other shows, it was tiny, but it was major. And
well, it was the quality people that really understood the artifacts were there.
And so what was interesting was the whole concept here of taking stuff on tour was to show it to different key collecting disciplines. Not the same group of people. Each one's different.
Yeah, it wasn't like going from coin show to coin show. It was
gold rush people collect gold rush. And then it went to the
bottle people,
to the National Bottle Show, because so much of it was glass.
It was glass.
And we just happened to have, for the first time in 20 years, the National Bottle Show in Reno this year. Right here. National Bottle Show. So that was a big show. That's the first
that was great.
That's the first time with Rob's help we put up a major world-class museum display. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
Then so that was a different batch of collectors, and that's also some artifact collectors. Then we hit the coin people.
We went to the A&A, and I got Nemo dragged out of the warehouse where it had been sitting for 25 years.
Yeah, the National Coin Show in Chicago.
Yeah.
And we got Nemo out. We set up a world-class museum exhibit in a space about 50 by 50 feet. Thousands saw it. It was TV everywhere. It was great. Remarkable. And then the last one was
the
an international mineral show in Denver, hosted by an important long-time show promoting family out of Germany who knew what they were doing. And you had a world-class jewelry show and mineral show at the same time, and it was phenomenal. And that was the 4th. So there you're exposing it to a whole different batch of collectors, more centered on the jewelry side and the stones and the California gold quartz, all that kind of stuff.
That
so,
kind of thing.
So it's attacking yet a 4th different audience. We tried for a 5th audience, which was the actually a 5th and a 6th. The first one was the National Manuscript Show, which is usually back east in Hartford, Connecticut. Well, they never even responded to us ever, and then it turned out they canceled their show anyway.
Yeah.
So we never heard from them. Then I decided, well, we need to go to New York City, because New York is where this stuff was headed.
It was headed there. I mean, we did the gold rush where it came from, and then we were headed to.
I thought the New Yorkers would love it, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
We couldn't
find get a response there.
A venue. It took 2 weeks for a response from ANS and the others, and nobody wanted it, and they didn't see how it was important, and we were kind of blown away.
So that's
okay,
it.
We
created essentially the next show with these fabulous catalogs. I mean this was great fun. Putting this catalog together, not just for the great photos and things like that, but I'd found the 3D photos, and there was a way to print 3D photos in a catalog for the first time, and
we had already decided to use the in situ photos that you had with the artifacts, as many as we could get in the time allowed, because this was under a ridiculous time budget, because we just completed 4 shows around America and had to somehow magically get this done too, which was almost impossible. So we tried that. But the great thing, as you just breached on, was Chicago, when you brought your notebook. And when you opened that notebook on a Sunday, we didn't see the light of day until 5 o'clock, did we?
There was a lot of good pictures in the notebook.
So that's Bob's 3-dimensional photographs.
Yes.
And we went nuts.
Those were fun. We thought it was going to take us about an hour and a half to go through these photos and pick some stuff out, and we ended up spending all day. All day,
and then the second we were done, I picked up the phone and called the printer.
Yeah, it said, "Is it possible to find out a way that we can do this?
Can I do 3D photos in a catalog? I got to do it."
Yeah.
And he says, "I'll find a way." And he called us back the next day and said, "Yes."
So it was great, because it was great for me actually as well. Everything I had done in the analysis of the site had more to do with what could be done next. And it didn't have so much to do with what had we done in the past. And so getting back to those 3D photos, which were of the gold room before we had done anything.
Before you touched it, yeah.
I mean, I got to credit Tommy Thompson with all of the other quirks that he had. He understood the importance of that moment and that it should be fully documented. And we did that. And it's stunning. I mean, we were looking at them through a 3D viewer, but even with the glasses and on the pages, you're basically swimming over the top of the greatest lost treasure in United States history.
And you're trying to sit there and grab those ingots, because they're right in front of you, and I'm trying to grab that son of a bitch, and it's not coming, but it's right there. It's right there in 3D. And then Rob blew one up on the wall right here next to me now that's about 1.5 feet by 2 feet, and you look at that with the glass, and it's like, wow.
Yeah. It's almost life-size, and
that's
it
what
really
we wanted
feels
to do
that way.
In the catalog.
Yeah,
we wanted these people, you and I wanted these people to feel what you felt when you discovered it.
Yeah. And so it was great to recreate that, and actually to go back and look at the dive logs. See, the situation back in the day was that with the computer technology and everything else, you have to remember this was roughly, circa 1990 when all this is happening. It's primitive by modern standards. We were shooting Ektachrome slides They were not digital. They had to be digitized in order for us to do this 3D stuff that we did. Ektachrome slides. The dive logs were a digital system, but they're on printed on dot matrix paper, dot matrix fan folded paper. Remember?
Yeah.
And it was the logs that we had back when we were at sea. I had to match those up with the different dives and all this. There was a lot of analog work that had nothing to do with digital databasing. That had never been done with this, and still, frankly, hasn't been done because the primary source documents are difficult to sort through. So with the amount of time we had, we did as well as we could to find what we needed to allow these artifacts to tell their story, and it's been a wonderful ride.
What I think
I've learned so much about this period just this last year. And about the SSCA. Now, I've been working with it for, darn near 4 decades. And yet, here was another whole season of discovery.
It was. This last year has been
It was a season of discovery.
And I'm so blown away by this. I've always used the term cultural sample that came up. But the cultural sample is a really good cross-section. And I'm blown away by it. And I feel lucky to be the guy that got to go through it with you because we were making all these discoveries of stuff that came up in the sluice box or came up this way or that way and weren't necessarily intended to be part of the cultural sample.
The suite.
But
it was more random.
It's just totally random, and here it is.
And yet the regard ring was in the vacuum sweepings.
Right.
I mean, here's this really significant artifact.
Right.
Incredible piece of culture, incredible piece of history, and all of that kind of thing. And it was in the sediment trap.
Right.
It's like, what can you? How does that sort of thing? There are so many happy circumstances that have happened throughout this project.
Speaking of happy circumstances, wasn't it great of the number of descendants?
Yes.
Of passengers and officers.
Yes, it's been very, very gratifying
to meet us and took the time to come see us,
Yeah.
talk to us, give us copies of letters.
Basically, let us into their family history.
Let us in, and then I thought to myself, these stories are too good, and I started asking them, would you mind writing an essay? And I said, if you're not a good writer, I'll interview you, but I want it in your words, not mine.
Yeah.
And we got it from several of them, and then of course through time you were telling me how great the archaeologist was on the last expedition.
So we got him to write
we
article.
emailed him, and I still haven't met him. Love to meet him.
Yeah, great guy.
And this guy writes these 2 fantastic essays for us.
After you spend 4 months with him at sea, you won't need subtitles on Scottish movies.
That's right. And so we're getting these outside things that help bring it home for people and let them understand it. And of course, what's interesting on some of from my viewpoint is that you got a family history that's written, and here it is, which then turns me loose to go see if I can do some magic and come up with even more to supplement it. And each time I got lucky. Each time I got lucky.
Well, but the research tools that were available to you now
are totally different.
Than my history department back 30 years ago.
Yeah, back then, even like
we had to know how to use a library.
Even like some of the books I wrote, it's all by hands-on library research.
Yeah.
And if you're going to read a newspaper, you got to pull the microfilm and go through.
Hey, I started out making white on black copies of microfilm.
Right.
Back in the 80s.
Now I go in and
and there's a word search you can do on.
And I
there's word searches you can do on stuff.
That's
right. I mean, and it's just astonishing what is now available to you and is. It has so facilitated that process of historical research now.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get back in my sort of like private life, if you will, away from the SS Central America and use what I've learned about those tools to research some other stuff.
Yeah. And you know, and I gotta say this, in the last, since we got the stuff, so since we saw it in Florida,
In April.
we have had so much fun together on this voyage of discovery, which has been not just curating and identifying the artifact and looking at the history, but then the bigger context of how it fits into the ship, how it fits into history, all the rest of that stuff. And together, you know, we've been on this voyage, which is just incredibly fun, way fun. And of course, what it does eventually is we write up something, and then Bob, after we're all done, it goes to press, Bob says, oh, and then, and I'm going, oh, shit, you didn't tell me that. And then that leads me to something else. And I go, and then Bob goes, oh, shit, you didn't tell me that. So then we keep going because it doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped.
There was stuff on the, when we were talking at the podium this weekend, there were things that I dropped on you that you'd never heard before.
Right.
Because the associative memories just keep flowing.
Yeah, they keep coming. And,
you know, I mean, I've experienced so much in the last 40 years, and it's not always right on the tip of my tongue. You know, I gotta be reminded, and oh yeah, remember back then.
Yeah.
You know, it's
even in my mining career or the Americana career, either one, I've done so much stuff I can't remember. Mm-hmm. And you know, I got to have people help remind me. You know, it's fun when you've had such a wonderful career, and you not only don't have to make anything up. The problem is how much can you remember? You know, hell, I've published more than 250 papers, and I don't think I can remember half of them.
It's also been great to not just the descendants, but the truly engaged collectors that we met this last year.
Oh, they love it.
Who really, you know, they'll look at an artifact and they will, like you were telling me about the appraiser at one point. You know, it's just like, who is this? Yeah. There really is. It's not only what it is what does it mean? Yeah. And how does it speak? Yeah. And you know, Dwight Manley, actually, it was one of the, in the first couple of months that I worked with him, we did a History Channel show. He had the History Channel come in and do a show about Ship of Gold. And he did this interview back then that really sort of cemented my relationship with him at the time. He said that not all of the coins have stories to tell, but some of them do. Right. And I went like, wow, this is the kind of deeper understanding of the nature of a treasure that this treasure really needs. Right. It's not just cars to be bought and sold. Yeah, and it's stories to be read, and it's meanings to be discerned. Yeah, and you know that quote came from Richard Raymond Alasko, who was the appraiser for the Titanic as well. Right. And a marvelous, wonderful man. And in a recent international television interview, somebody said, how do you appraise something? And he says, it starts with the object. What does it tell you? Yeah. Who is this? Who is it? Who is this? And that's the way we think as scientists, along with my other classic engineering phrase, what's wrong with this picture? Yeah. and that's the way we think. And, and it opens these doors that are priceless. It's just, if it doesn't quite fit your previous conception of what the model is or how things, if there's that anomaly there somehow in the thing, you know, somebody once said that scientific discussions do not begin with "Eureka, I found it." They begin with, "That's weird." You know, and that's probably, I mean, if you say that's weird, you know, then you kind of go like, oh, you know, like there's something deeper here that we got to deal with. Yeah. And there's been a lot of that. And I remember going through just in recent months with you, going through the artifacts, and you just saying like, well, so what do we got here, Bob? Yeah. And we look at it together, and you're like, oh, I know. I once saw a such and such. Maybe it's that. And then we get in your library and you pull out some volume from 1838 and the answer's in there. Yeah. it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey. It's been
So it's over now because the stuff's all sold, and there's an interesting part of it that'll probably never get discussed either. But how the world financial market perceived the stuff, because the way we perceive it's different.
yeah.
We perceive it on who are you and what are you telling me, and that winds our watches.
Yeah.
But then you got this other market. I call it the financial market. I don't know what to call it.
I don't
it's
know.
The collectors.
It's
Yeah.
buying and selling.
What are they
and
gonna,
it's, yeah.
you know, what do they pay? We don't know.
But it's also been not just what are they going to pay, but what does it mean to them?
Well, that's where I was
and
headed.
that's what's been so gratifying, is to see how many collectors have purchased things that, oh, I'm going to get that and I'm going to put it with this because it tells this kind of story when it's combined. So there are so many people that actually get that,
and I think
want to make they're discerning collectors.
And they want it for their own story. And one of my favorite ones is every time you came up with a funny phrase that you invented on the ship, you know, somehow that was forever emblazoned in my brain.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately I have a sense of humor, so do you. So, of course, that's the name of the lot. You know, it's the Celebrity Wash Basin. It's Bob's Rust Deposit. And the Celebrity Wash Basin story is fantastic.
Hey, but it's also Mona Lisa of the Deep.
It's true.
That's a brand that I basically put on it.
Exactly.
When she first came up, there were various terms that were bandied about for this beautiful debutante, all decked out in lace and jewelry and such. I mean, you know, frankly, many people just were referring to her as the dirty girl.
Oh, no.
You know, and I said, like, no, she's more like the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, much so.
And so she became the Mona Lisa. And
I mean, you read Isaacson's book on Da Vinci, as I did, and his description of those paintings in the field of depth match that photograph.
Well, that photograph, that photographer had such a sense of his lighting.
Well, no one's figured out how
in three
they done
dimensions.
It. And I don't even know if Messier figured it out, because I've handled hundreds, if not thousands, of Dags and Ambrose.
And they're flat.
And I've never seen that depth of field, ever. Yeah. Never.
Yeah, it's a stunning piece.
It's stunning. And anyway, but back to the Celebrity Wash Basin, which I think is hysterical. And it's highly cherished by the gentleman that bought it.
Yes.
But it's in all the photos sitting there.
Because it's right next to the gold room. And it actually sat there for most of 3 years. I mean, when we discovered the gold room in '88.
And you used it as point of reference.
And yes, it became, I was telling the gentleman who purchased it that it became kind of a beacon of reference. And when we were landing Nemo to work on the gold room, we would land basically 1.5 feet from that thing. We would just come in and we'd get like as close as we could without landing on top of it. And that would allow us to reach quite far into the gold room deposit. At the end of at some point during the 1990 season, so we'd been there in '88 and we'd been there in '89. In '89, we took a ton of gold out of that deposit. And in 90,
2,000 pounds.
Yes, in 90 we were, we basically had exhausted the area that we could reach by landing next to the Celebrity broken wash basin. It's broken, but it's also a fascinating piece though, because it's broken and you can see the rust in all of the breaks. So you know it broke during the shipwreck. Right. Which is just fascinating in itself, because it speaks of the violence of the shipwreck. These are the stories these things have to tell. You know, but we had exhausted everything we could reach with Nemo's reach, which was considerable, and there was still more out there. And so we finally picked up the Celebrity wash basin and recovered it.
Well, at the end, it's still a construction or a deconstruction project.
Yes, it is.
You take you can out of the gold room, but to get to the rest, you've got to deconstruct part of that ship and move it out of the way.
Yeah. And in 2014, when we went back with the contractor, we did that all the way down to the hull in the stern half of the shipwreck. It was a very interesting thing to do, and we found out a lot of really cool artifacts.
that were sitting on top of the hull.
Many of which are now were in the sale this last week. I don't know. It's been nice riding with you.
Yeah, been fun.
Isn't that what they say in the Old West?
Yeah, been doing good. Yeah, now we got to find a new world of joint music together.
Yes, well, we're gonna find things to do together. I'm sure.
Lots of music and stuff.
Music and perhaps travel to some interesting places.
Yeah, we got to do some birding. So, interviewer, you got questions?
This has been great, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Okay. It sure has been nice riding with you.
Love it. Yeah, we have discovered that we are brothers in more ways than people could ever understand, and it just happened.
I never knew this guy. He lives in another planet. He's a geologist. He plays music. He's interested in history. It's nature. All of these things that I'm that guy in Eastern Ohio.
Yeah.
So it's been fabulous.
So we are brothers in this thing and inseparable, and it has grown, in particular this last year, real close, which has just made it really fun for both of us beyond what we could have thought, and I'm glad we got to do it, and it's been fun. And
the SS Central America
lives on.
Will continue to live on.
Lives on.
And it has lots of stories to tell.